as I'm working on my drawings, what I want to do is I want to start to add notes and dimensions to it in order to get information out about it. Now, when I start to create my sections and elevations, what I have to do in order to take somebody to those drawings quickly is I need to add what are called symbols. So AutoCAD has symbols automatically loaded into it, and to access those, if you hold down Control and type the 3 key, what comes up is essentially your tool palettes. And again, it's Control plus 3. And what this has is it has a series of blocks of dynamic blocks that you can use, of symbols that you can start to put into your set. You can see that there's some structural symbols. There are different hatches if you want to load those in. There's also electrical symbols. You're probably not going to be using those all that often. But what you will be using are those section and elevation tags. So if I right-click where these pages or these tabs kind of bunch up in this corner here, if I right-click on that, you'll see that this is the full list of the categories of those symbols that are in the tool palettes. What I want to do is I want to access the annotation menu, and you'll see that I have both imperial and metric samples, and we're going to be using imperial. And with those, there's the tag, which is essentially a structural tag for structural grids, the grid bubble. There's a callout bubble, there's a section callout, there's an elevation, a drawing title, a graphics scale, so on and so forth. Now, to add my notes, or my elevations and my section tags, what they have for the elevation tag, for example, is not exactly what we follow in the profession. So what I would do if I were you is I would stick to the callout bubble, okay, for the elevations, and I would stick to the section callout for your sections. And it's really easy. What I have to do is I just click and drag those symbols into my drawing, okay, and let go, and it'll insert them in there. Okay. Now, when I go to insert them, okay, they're actually annotative. So if I go into the properties of that tag, you'll see that they are annotative, and that you can associate them with your annotative scales like you do with your text and your dimensions. So I find that to be particularly really helpful. And of course, I want to put these on their own layers. So I'm going to put these on the IDEN layer. Okay, and with these blocks, okay, so they are a block, they're a bit special. Okay, you'll see that it comes in with this information already in it, but what you can do, okay, with these blocks, this is a dynamic block, so that essentially means that you can double click on this block, and what comes up is this attribute editor, so that I can start to edit the information in this particular block without affecting other blocks that I might have. So if I cancel that and I copy this block, okay, say I want to do an elevation of this interior space, okay, if I double click on this block, okay, what I want to do is I want to start to enter the information. Now the view number is essentially the detail number, and the sheet number is the sheet number that this detail is on. So for example, if I go into my elevations, and this is my detail number 2 on sheet A7, okay, I'm going to type in 2 for my view number, click on my sheet number, and I'm going to type in A7, and again that's going to be in caps, and I'm going to hit OK. Now what else is helpful about this is that you'll notice that when I select it, there's these grips. Okay, the middle grip, like other objects, is the move grip, and then these other ones allow you to either flip the arrow of the symbol, okay, or I can actually take the arrow tip and I can point it towards the elevation that I want to take. Okay, so it's referencing this wall, and essentially the arrow is perpendicular to it. This is where my eye is pointing to and what my eye is seeing. But you'll notice that when I did that, when I changed the information in this elevation tag, okay, it didn't change this one, and that's the beauty of these types of blocks, is that you can, start to add information. Maybe this is view 3, and again, that's sheet A7. Okay, and I can, change the arrow on this. I can do whatever I want. I can flip it, and it doesn't affect this other block. But technically, they are the same blocks. Now, I'm not going to get into creating these types of dynamic blocks, but they're really not terribly difficult. And when you go to create your blocks, you'll notice that there are some palettes that come up with certain options when you get into the block editor, and that's basically how you start to set these up. Now, as I noted before, these are typical of elevations, okay? If I want to add a section, okay, all I have to do is click on my section callout and drag it in like my elevation. And what this shows is essentially the same callout bubble, okay, the same head of the callout with the arrow. And what it does is, as a section, it actually has a tail, okay? So if I want to take a section of this, say I want to do a section all the way through. Okay, what I can do is I can take this arrow and I can rotate it. I can stretch it. Okay, this part of it is called the flag. I'm just going to take my arrow key, or my move command, sorry, and I'm going to move it down a little bit, because what you don't want it to do is you don't want it to cross right in the middle of other text. Or any other text, dimension information, anything like that. And again, I can double click on that. I can change the information. Let's say it's detail number 6 on sheet A, let's say 7.2, if I have a section like that. And that's essentially it. I can again flip that flag if I want. And I can also, with this option, have either the flag on or the flag off. Okay, if I turn the flag off, a lot of times what happens is that you have this long line going through a plan, which might start to get confusing, especially if you start to confuse it with a wall. So what you can do is you can actually turn that flag off, and you can just bring that line in a little bit, and that's still understood as a section. And again, I would put that on the ident layer. Okay, and this is also annotative like our elevation tags that we entered in. Well, those tags that we just entered should go into our original modified plan, or our original plan, depending on which plan we're working with. What we also want to do is we want to start to add some tags to our paper space sheets. Okay, so this is my paper space sheet. This is my A1. I have my title block xref in here. I have my my original plan xref into model space. And now what I want to do is I want to add the drawing tags for it. So again, if I hold down Control and hit 3, okay, or call up my tool palettes, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to add what are called these drawing titles. Okay, so I can click and I can drag in one of these drawing titles. Now, what I have said, maybe not to everybody, but what I've kind of mentioned a little bit to people, is that what I don't like to do is I don't like to take my viewport and make it as big as, the other space in the title block. Reason being is that if I don't have my viewport locked, okay, so let's say I unlock that, the way to edit any of these tags is to double click it, okay? If I go to double click it and I accidentally double click within my viewport and activate my viewport, okay, and somehow I go and I zoom in and out, okay, in order to get out of it, then what that does is it screws up my scale. Okay, so now I need to make sure that I am back on 16th inch. Okay, I'm going to use my pan to move it up. And what I like to do is, as I said, I just like to keep my viewport. Well, those tags that we just entered should go into our original modified plan, or our original plan, depending on which plan we're working with. What we also want to do is we want to start to add some tags to our paper space sheets. Okay, so this is my paper space sheet. This is my A1. I have my title block xref in here. I have my my original plan xref into model space. And now what I want to do is I want to add the drawing tags for it. So again, if I hold down Control and hit 3, okay, or call up my tool palettes, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to add what are called these drawing titles. Okay, so I can click and I can drag in one of these drawing titles. Now, what I have said, maybe not to everybody, but what I've kind of mentioned a little bit to people, is that what I don't like to do is I don't like to take my viewport and make it as big as, the other space in the title block. Reason being is that if I don't have my viewport locked, okay, so let's say I unlock that, the way to edit any of these tags is to double click it, okay? If I go to double click it and I accidentally double click within my viewport and activate my viewport, and somehow I go and I zoom in and out, okay, in order to get out of it, then what that does is it screws up my scale. Okay, so now I need to make sure that I am back on 16th inch. Okay, I'm going to use my pan to move it up. And what I like to do is, as I said, I just like to keep my viewport nice and small as it can be, in order to encompass all of my notes and my dimensions that are going to be outside of it. Okay, and then what I do is I put my view title, okay, I put that outside of it, but I want to make sure that it has enough space that it doesn't get cut off in that non-print area. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Okay, and again, what I want to do is I want to put that on its own layer. So I'm going to take it off layer 0, and I'm going to put it, I can put it on my, let's say my sheet notes, okay, or my the text on my sheet here, basically the same layer as this. And again, what I can do is I can double click on it. I'm going to change this to original plan, and I'm going to change the scale from 1:1 to 1/16 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. Okay, this is important because it's telling the viewer, okay, or whoever's measuring it, that a 1/16 of an inch equals 1 foot. Okay, so that's why we always have to note that like that. And I can hit OK. Now, when we saw with our elevations, we might not have 1, we might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And what that means is that I can have multiple drawings on one sheet. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, this is my original plan, drawing here. And then what I'm going to have is, let's say, a detail. Okay, so I'll zoom into this area here, and I'll have it, be at, 3/8 of an inch or whatever fits. Okay, just for this example. Typically we don't have more than one drawing in terms of plans, although you could very well have 2 plans on one sheet. That's fine. But you'll see that this one takes up, basically almost all the sheets, so we might have a detail to go along with it. Okay, so let's say I have a stair detail for some reason next to my plan on my sheet. Okay, and this would be my drawing number 2. So for example, if I have elevations, anything like that, okay, I can have tons and tons and tons of those on one sheet, and then all I have to do is copy this, bring it over here. We always try to align everything, so I'm going to turn my ortho on, and I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to say that's detail number 2, okay, and this is going to be stair detail, and I need to double check my scale. It's at 1/8, so I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to change that from 1/16 to 1/8. Okay, so whenever you see a tag, whether it's a section, elevation, and also a detail tag, okay, you can say that A1, okay, this is detail number 1 on A1. This is detail number 2 on A1. So that's how you're going to work with your elevations and your section tags. Is the top number is the detail number, so either 1 or 2 in this example. Okay, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as many drawings as you have on a sheet. And the sheet number, okay, the bottom number is A1. So that's where that notation comes from, so that somebody can easily see that tag, they can jump to that sheet, they can look at that detail, and they save a lot of time rather than, having to go through all the sheets on the set and to search for that detail.